Welcome to the Crystal Kids Radio Show Live Edition. I am Natalie-Marie Hart, the host of Crystal Kids Radio Show. Today, one of my first Skype live interviews video. We are doing a special edition interview with my special guest, who is my dear friend by the name of Dr. Carmen Boulter. She is a former university teacher at the University at Calgary. She has an incredible passion for Egypt, traveling there many times. She's the creative fire behind the Pyramid Code. She is the director, writer, and producer of the Pyramid Code series. You can go to her website, www.pyramidcode.com, to find out more about the Pyramid Code series. Please support and buy Carmen's DVD, The Pyramid Code. It is also on Netflix. You can also watch the trailer on my YouTube channel, Natalie-Marie Hart, or you can search the trailer on YouTube, or you can also go to my website, www.crystalkidsradio.com, to see the trailer. He is in the works of a new documentary series with 4 new episodes called The New Atlantis, and you can support it by making a small donation on the Ingaloo campaign. It is called The New Atlantis, Dr. Carmen Boulter. Just search it and you should find it. Or you could look at it in the video description. Carmen is the author of the Angels and Archetypes, an evolutionary map of feminine consciousness. I consider Dr. Carmen Boulter as a female version of Indiana Jones. She is truly an inspiring individual. I would like to welcome back my dear friend Dr. Carmen Boulter. I am so excited to have you today. We're going to talk about a groundbreaking discovery that was found in Egypt. So how are you doing today? Thank you for coming back.
It's my pleasure to be on your show, Natalie-Marie.
Oh, it's always an honor and a pleasure having you. Thank you. For my audience who does not know of you, could you please give them a little bit of your background? Tell us what inspired you to get into Egyptology, such a subject like that. Please.
Well, it started when I was a little girl. When I was 6 years old, I started having past life memories of Egypt. And I didn't really know what it was. And by the time I was 12, I was reading everything in sight about Egypt and looking up plane tickets. And I ended up there for the first time in 1977. I've been there 29 times since. And so I think that what I'm doing is looking to verify things, incarnations in Egypt. And because it's so important and it was so, the lives were important lives. And they often didn't end well, as many past lives don't. I feel like I'm actually looking for things that I knew about before.
Yep, I understand. Describe this labyrinth throughout time. Could you please tell us about the amazing discovery called the Lost Egyptian Labyrinth, and what is happening with this discovery? What's uncovered in this discovery?
Okay, so it's called the Labyrinth.
Okay.
It's a known site. Herodotus talked about it in 450 BC. and he talked about 2 distinct levels being there, that he was in the top level. But since, over time, there's a Ptolemaic level from the times of Antony and Cleopatra, and there's a Roman level. So the top 2 layers have been excavated. And I think that people kept going back to the same site because there was something important about what was stored there. And so it has not, the 2 lower levels have not been excavated, but now we have space archaeology. And there are various programs and software that work in conjunction with the high-definition satellite scans. But they're not all the same. And so a friend of mine, Klaus Donna, is in touch with a man in Germany who actually developed the software that has different key signatures for each element. And so it's almost like barcodes on products at the grocery store. It's looking at longitudinal waves of light. So they do a separate scan for water, for precious metals, precious jewels, bone, pottery, and just space, cavities. And so he is getting more and more reliability and validity with these scans as they do the scan and then go to the site and check. So governments have hired him to find water, in Zimbabwe, gold in Bolivia. The Bosnian Pyramid entrance to the tunnel system was found using this technology. And so there's a lot more as time goes on that's showing that this scan is really reliable and valid. Mm-hmm. So there has not been an excavation yet of those levels. There's been work that's been done at Awara, and I'm in touch with the Polish team, and there's another international team, but all the work stopped in 2008. And so this is the resurgence. This is new technology. So new technology is better than old technology because it's higher resolution, just like you wouldn't want the same cell phone you had 10 years ago or the same camera. And older is deeper in archaeology. And archaeology is a destructive science. So that's why the archaeologists have to be really careful in terms of keeping a record. So if someone comes along in 100 years, they can see what it used to look like. Now, Flinders Petrie in 1881 did a full excavation there, and they found mummified crocodiles. There's a city called Crocodipolis nearby, and they found a number of wooden coffins there, and the deceased person's face was painted on the wooden coffin. And these are in the Petrie Museum in London, England. And apparently they are the oldest realistic versions of paintings of humans that exist. And they found granite columns and some artifacts that look quite similar to other things in Egypt, and they're now in an open air museum. So I went to the site in April and filmed that and climbed the pyramid. There's a pyramid there, and filmed the whole experience of being there. So we're in the process now of applying for permits to the Supreme Council of Antiquities, which is the governing body that makes decisions about all excavations. We don't know if we're going to get permits or not. We still know something's down there because of the, as I said, the verifiability of the scan itself. Okay. Mm-hmm. But it's deep and it's huge. So the site measures 81 football fields. 81 football fields.
Big, yeah. And
there's a layer that's deeper than 60 feet. Another layer deeper than 120 feet. Deep. Now, there's 82 chambers. There's 82 chambers, and 6 of them are bigger than Olympic-sized swimming pools. And on one side, there's a canal. On one side, all of the rooms except one are bigger than an average-sized house. That's like burying a number of airports. Now, why would it need to be that big? And what are they doing with it? Now, the 2 levels don't connect to each other, so it's, in my mind, and the shape of them looks different, so it looks like 2 different constructions. On the upper layer, there's 2 different constructions there, one on one side of the canal, one on the other side of the canal. We're coming to think that the canal was placed there as a bit of a decoy, because it follows this serpentine kind of shape, which is exactly parallel to the chambers in the lower level. So the man who put the canal there is Louis de Belfond, and he was an engineer, a water engineer, and he was the one commissioned to build the Suez Canal. And now I've just been told that they're doing a restoration of the Suez Canal, and Dr. Zahi Hawass is in charge of that, because he's no longer running the department. And so Petrie said that as well, and there is water in the pyramid. Like, I did go into the pyramid itself, and you can, if you drop something, you can hear it go plunk, like in water. And so the excavations were never done there because they were afraid they were going to have to move the canal, and somebody commissioned $2.5 million to move the canal. I mean, how do you move a river, right? And so it's there for irrigation for the farmers' fields at the moment. But it doesn't seem necessary. The scan is accurate enough to show us that there's not filled with water. And it seems that they haven't been opened before. So this is a really, really huge find. Until you verify and actually go dig. But we don't know for sure that we're going to get that chance, right? So we're going to keep trying. We won't give up on that. But We formal permission for a big team to go in there and do the dig.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So at first we would do boreholes about 3 inches across around and dig into the exact location. So there's a device that is an on-site device that has an antenna that makes those even more accurate to be able to say, okay, here, go straight down from here. And then we can send an LED camera down and do a 3D mapping and actually see what's there, even without excavating. We could look into some of the chambers.
I would love for my
So we've researched the equipment and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And my interest is not having it hidden from anyone, because that tends to be, if things don't fit the cultural paradigm, they bury artifacts again, right? They want everybody to think that we're 5,000-6,000 years old, and of course that anthropology and archaeology are finding things that are far older, but that doesn't fit with the Bible and the Quran and all of that. And so we're really breaking through to a new way of evaluating ages of things, because carbon-14 dating has been the primary method, and after 30,000 years that starts to really break down. And there's also so many ways that things can get contaminated and not be true. So I'm not sure if we could get something that was datable from just the boreholes, but it is possible, because sometimes they've done that before, where they dig down and then they come up with pieces of beads. Sarah Parsak actually did that, and she calls it space archaeology as well. The Global Pyramid Conference in May next year in Chicago, outside Chicago, at a Golden Pyramid Conference Center. And Dr. Sam of the Bosnian Pyramids will be there, and Sarah Parsak, amongst a number of other people. And so she found, through doing ground-penetrating radar from a satellite, she found something that looked like a city that had been buried. And she went to Egypt, and they dug a hole, a borehole, and they pulled stuff up, and so they know there's something down there, and they're at the stage of, again, waiting for permits to see if they can excavate, but they were able to verify. Now, she's using a different kind of technology. And they're popping up all over the place now, but they're not all as powerful as this. And so one of the issues is that, if people haven't heard of something, they assume it's not good, it doesn't work. And there's so little new under the sun, really. I mean, we're just same old, repeat, and people go, yeah, and they just expect to hear about things they've heard about before. And if it's shocking, they just say, well, it can't be true. I don't know about it already, so it can't be true. But these new technologies are turning up at a great velocity.
Right, yeah. Could you please show my audience the 3D mapping?
That is a 3D version of the report that we got. Okay. Of the two levels, and the 3D shows you how you can see underneath. You can see how the pyramid is separate. You can see where the canal is, and then you can see that the two levels don't connect. And that wouldn't be the case like in the Valley of the Kings, for example, where KV 55 Ramses II has 75 rooms, and they go down, and all the different levels connect. It's nothing. It doesn't look like anything anyone's seen before. Okay, so it seems that it would have been a different time frame and a different cultural group than what we see in the temples, which are also separate and distinct in what we see in the pyramids. So that would have been a different time frame as well, as far as I can see. And so, so I had an animator create that so that you could actually see underneath and get perspective. Also on the size of it, because it makes the pyramid look pretty small. The pyramid, almost looks like a cherry on the cake, sort of thing, because this site is vast. It's unbelievably huge, and it's hard for us to even fathom. I mean, why would you bury how big an airport is? But it's that sort of thing, why would you have that so deep in the ground? And so the question also becomes, has it always been underground, or did the sand fill in? Right? But I don't think it's possible for the sand to have filled it in all the way to the lower level. So both levels were probably underground the whole time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Has anyone on purpose tried to stop this discovery from coming out?
Well, that's a good question. because people have been kind of hovering around it for a long time, and Zahi Hawass insisted there was nothing there, and he's never even been to the site, as my information is that, he just kept on, putting it down. So the permits have been blocked a number of times from, there's been little permits given for restoration or for cleaning up the site or for doing a survey. But no one knew until I actually found, because no one had done this sort of scan, and no one seemed to have the satellite coordinates of it. So I actually did a needle in the haystack search for 2 days on Google Earth, looking at ancient maps, trying to orient the north, south, east, west, and literally went up and down with Google Earth until I found it. And then I had the coordinates, and then I gave the coordinates to the people with the technology. And so that's what we would be using as a basis for the application for excavation. But no one ever tried to excavate that deep. Anybody who had done anything before with the old style of GPR that laid these wires on the surface of the sand, so they had the information of how to drive there, but not how to see it from space. And that low resistivity, they did 7 different kinds of tests that were looking for anomalies, but those tests only went 5, 8, and 12 meters deep. And all that we're talking about is far deeper than that. So they found something, and their scan looked like blobs. And so, but when you look at it, you don't say, oh, that's a place, that's a discovery. You see, it looks like blobs. You see that there's something in there, so there's some kind of anomaly at that level as well. But I'm thinking that's the Ptolemaic layer, right? Which is the 75 BC sort of time. So I think pretty much all permits in Egypt are pretty tough to get. There's a 12-page document for applying for to the Supreme Council of Antiquities, 12 pages of instructions for how to apply, which is, up there with applying for PhDs and that sort of thing. And the first thing said, no new permits to excavate will be granted from the area in Upper Egypt, and then in brackets it said from Giza to Abu Simbel, which is pretty much where all the sites are. But apparently this site is an exception, and it's exempt. So there's quite a few people that are interested in, doing the discovery, but it has to all coordinate with a team of archaeologists and the Supreme Council of Antiquities and the authorities in Egypt, and somebody who coordinates the whole thing, and somebody who has the accuracy of the scan, and the people who develop that would also have to come down. So it's really complicated, and I would say yes, there's been all kinds of things blocking. There's stories. If it goes back that far, and somebody like Herodotus, who came from Greece, is talking about it. I mean, this site is a big, big mystery. But the other thing for me is I've been looking for it for 25 years. So at first I thought it was Giza. And I spent 5 years doing field work in Egypt on the Giza Plateau, going in and out of these holes to try to see how they connected. And there is an awful lot there too. But that's not the same thing as this. And so, I searched in the Western Desert, also finding something that may have been a candidate to be that kind of site, that looked like it had 30-foot thick walls, and it was a trapezoid shape. And it looked like there was a pyramid there as well. But from Google Earth, just looking directly down on top of it, because that's how the satellites move around the planet, correct?
Yeah.
Just looking down on top of it, again, needle in a haystack, but there was a date on the satellite scan that had a photograph of this place. And I was able to look up the company name and the date, and they told me that it was Egypt within this certain area. But it's the Western Desert is the size of the state of Texas. So I went there. We had to fly in with a hot air balloon and a Russian scientist. And, I chose to bring them because they had specialized equipment so we could see what was, And we got there, and it was a modern site, and it wasn't a pyramid per se. It was a cement target for the Air Force. So that was in 2012, February 2012. And I led an expedition, and it was extremely dangerous going into a military zone with permits. And that turned out not to be it. So I had seen things about this site before, and there is a copper engraving that was done in 1670 that shows some kinds of technology that's down there. And that's been replicated. So, there's a lot of mysterious stuff down there. And people say, well, maybe there's going to be hieroglyphic all over the wall. I would be really surprised if it was anything anybody's seen before. I think it's far, far, far older than anything anybody's seen.
I think so too. I really do. What do you think the labyrinth was used for?
Well, I've been thinking about it a lot, and of course we can only speculate at this point until we see. Because of the depth, I hesitate to say this because I always want to not have an audience say, but again, I tie things to past lives. And so one of my first past life readings, I was told that I was on an evacuation committee when they knew that Atlantis was going to go down. Now, in my research, and there are ancient texts, Atlantis actually had 3 worldwide disasters. And it was a worldwide seafaring culture. So when people say, well, was Atlantis the Bimini Road, or was it Santorini, or was it the Straits of Gibraltar, or here, the high antiplano in South America? I say all of the above. Okay? And so each time there was a natural disaster, it damaged parts of it, and then they recovered and did some more, but they also increased in technology. So there was, I don't know the date of the first disaster, but the second one was 17,500 BC. And the third one was 13,660 years ago. And so if we were on a committee, you, me, and 10 other people, and we knew that it would be enough of an impact from an asteroid or whatever that was going to crack the continent, what would we do? We would find a way to colonize, move people to higher ground, possibly build pyramids to stabilize the telluric grid, the ley lines around the planet. And I think we would probably do a time capsule with our stuff. Mm-hmm. We'd hide the technology somehow. And so I suspect that the upper level of the 2 deep levels would have been, I suspect, the 17,500 disaster in Atlantis. Under that, it could be from off planet. I have psychic friends who have tuned into this place that don't talk to each other, who have said similar things, and I've had my own psychic views of it. And, like Zecharia Sitchin was talking about 450,000 years ago, the planet was colonized. Now, Sitchin has been largely unverifiable, but there's lots of people that are talking about a good long time ago. It could be that, everybody's talking about ETs and, disclosure isn't something that the United States government has allowed, but there's loads of other countries, Argentina, Mexico, the UK, even Canada, that have released their UFO files. But as long as the American government is saying no, they don't exist, then it's not out in the open. But if we were visited, how would they have decompressed, adjusted to the atmosphere? What would they have done with their technology? I think of it as there's some kind of repository, and the reason is that it's not like a temple where there's a door at the front, and then there's a hypostyle hall, and then you go down a passage, and there's another hypostyle hall, and you keep going down to the back where the Holy of Holies is. Mm-hmm. All the temples are constructed in the same way. And most of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings are constructed in the same way, where you go down, and there's even passageways. And this isn't like that. This is isolated, separate rooms. And some of them, they're big like farmers' fields. But they don't have doorways on them. So we'd have to, excavate, as I say, to go and check. But to me, it looks more like a storage area than anything else.
Right, yeah.
Like a massive storage area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too, yeah. That could be it. Mm-hmm.
But old. It would not be that deep if it wasn't really old. Mm-hmm. Okay, so all the people who've talked about it, Pliny, Strombo, over the centuries, they weren't talking to each other either. So it was like 600 years apart. But they would have been passed down through the legends where someone knew of the place and then the next people came along and did what they did. So there's 4 distinct layers there.
Yeah, 4.
Okay?
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Are you going to get any more scans for the labyrinth?
The labyrinth? Yes, we don't even have the final report yet. It's very costly, and so scans will be far more accurate. And then, like I said, we were going to be able to take someone with us to make it even more accurate.
Yeah.
So, the work has been done to scan for water, to scan for bone, gold. Each of the different scans have been done. We didn't examine the pyramid itself because that wasn't the protocol, though there's work that has been, we didn't replicate other people's work. There's work that's been done examining the passageways in the pyramid, but again, because it's a mud brick pyramid, literally, it kind of looks washed. They call it the weeping pyramid, actually, because whenever there's been moisture, it's eroded the sand and made rivulets like you would get on a riverbank, for example. But you can see right through in between some of the bricks, right? So it's actually not in very good shape. So some people suspect that there's something else underneath the pyramid. So this has just been layers upon layers upon layers. And I think that this pyramid that's there now is quite recent, quite recently built, because the better pyramids and the better technology is older. Yeah. And it's almost like Egypt sprang into form, in its peak. And then the temples and that sort of thing that we've seen before, and then started to deteriorate. Mm. So the poorly constructed pyramids are actually newer.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's so true. So how do you know an age of a pyramid?
We don't.
Yes. So
when they say 2450 BC, they don't know that that's true. They found a tiny little statue of Cheops. Okay. And that's actually in the pyramid code. At Saqqara, which is 15 miles down the road. And that's the only record of Cheops. And he's the guy that built the Great Pyramid. And this tiny little statue proves it, doesn't it? Yeah. So we're obsessed with the word proof, right? And, and that's not something anyway. So how do you date a pyramid? At the Bosnian pyramids, organic material in between the third and the fourth course. Now, the Bosnian pyramids are covered in trees because it would have been pre-diluvial that they were built before the flood, and there would have been a big thick layer of silt over the top of the straight-sided pyramid from the residue when the water disappeared, which would be enough to grow vegetation and trees. And so when people looked, it's kind of hard to see that it's a straight-sided pyramid because all the trees are different heights, right? So if we could take a helicopter and shave it like you mow the lawn, then you would see that it actually is straight-sided. So between the third and fourth course, they found some organic material, and they've done several dating things from material found in the tunnels as well. And they've come out at 31,000 years old, and I saw 38,000 years old. Organic material between the layers in Bosnia, and now there's a new one at Gunung Penang where I'm guest host on a tour in December in Java, and there's a pyramid there, and they've dated that site. Archaeologists have dated that site to 23,000 years. Okay, so there are new kinds of dating techniques: photoluminescent, thermoluminescent, potassium argon. And people like Michael Cremo, who wrote the book Forbidden Archaeology, and I'm speaking at the Modern Knowledge Tour with him in Vancouver, August 29th, and in Victoria, August 30th. Very excited to meet him. He's found million-year-old bones that he's managed to date. So dating, carbon-14 doesn't date stone. But there's other things, like there's certain kinds of dating techniques that will measure the age, the last time the item was heated to a certain temperature. So that would be brilliant for dating pottery, because pottery is fired, right? So you have to be really careful with the dating techniques and what will take something back far enough. But the other part is the labs themselves, because in Peru, there's a protocol that nothing's supposed to be older than 6,000 years.
Really?
Well, so something goes that could be, like Klaus told me this story, he thought something was going to be 100 or up to 250,000 years old, and they kept the piece for over a year, and then when he went to pick it up, they said, oh, you don't have to pay us. And it's 5,800 something, under 6,000. Mm-hmm. So he realized that sometimes the labs are corrupt, because for some reason they don't want us to know what our real heritage is, or the fact that there could have been a lot of other civilizations that occurred before the ones that they want us to know about. And so how do you date something? Very, very carefully. But we also have to open our minds up to the possibility of things being far older than we ever guessed. And now every couple of days there's another pyramid that's been found. So now there's Java, the Philippines, Alaska, Antarctica, an underground pyramid found in Italy, pyramids found on the bottom of the ocean off the coast of Cuba, where they're sending cameras down because it's too deep for people to dive. And so, there's people who are saying, oh, no, Bimini Road is natural, Yanaguni at the bottom of Japan, oh, that's all natural. It's not. So what we're finding is things that are man-made, that are under a bunch of trees, under the water, hidden in plain sight. And it's almost like there's pyramids in Bosnia, Serbia, all over. It's incredible.
It is.
It's incredible. And there's photographs. So now we do have Google Earth, and you can just look around. Now, sometimes people mistake pyramids, though. Like there's somebody who found, they said, oh, you don't even have to go to Egypt and you can find new pyramids. And there were ostensibly pyramid fields near the Fayum Oasis. Well, I've been on the open desert there, on that one expedition. I've been on a couple of expeditions where there's an open desert. Well, I'm bouncing along in the Jeep, kind of looking out my eyes, going, oh, they look like pyramids. It's like, they do look like pyramids, but they're sand dunes. So from Google Earth, they look like pyramids.
Yeah, they do.
But they're not. They're sand dunes, okay? So we have to be careful when we say we've made a discovery without going there to verify, because that's going to be a hypothesis, right? So dating pyramids is a tricky business. Now, I say maybe in 2450 BC was the last renovation of the pyramid, okay? Mm-hmm. But as I've said before, the last time you painted your house has nothing to do with the date your house was built.
Yeah, that's so true.
Okay, and so we also have to put it into a context. Like, nothing fits. Like, why are those pyramids there? And if they're buried in tree or whatever, they're under a bunch of trees, well, that means it was pre-flood. Well, when was the last flood? 13,660. And that's a precision that comes up through the calendar of catastrophes that has been called the Dendera Zodiac, and that Napoleon that the zodiac, but what it is it's pinpointing the exact moment of the flood. And in the first hypostyle hall of the Dendera temple, they've cleaned that looked like looking into a cup of black coffee before, and they've cleaned it, and that has the linear zodiac that says pre-flood, flood. And so when that flood happened, it seems that the axis of the earth was up straight, and there were 360 days in the year on the Egyptian calendar. They had 3 10-day weeks a month, right?
Yeah, right.
3 10-day weeks. And their calendar was different. But then the axis, this impact was so strong that it knocked the axis of the earth off by 14 degrees, which is what gives the precessional wobble. And they had to start over again, remapping the who, what, where goes what. They had to remap everything because the time didn't work. And then we ended up with 365 days. So instead of doing what we did with the Gregorian calendar, they decided to just add 5 days at a time. And so they gave one to each of the gods, Isis, Osiris, Set, Horus, and I forget. But they just gave one for each, and it's like Christmas holidays. Christmas, New Year's week is like our day out of time, or a week out of time. It's just like nobody expects anything to happen. That's just kind of holiday. So that's what they did, but it was that dramatic. And so there was most assuredly, there was time in Egypt before the flood. And so we need to really open up and look for real clues and put them together. And that's what the Pyramid Code did for people as well, was open up a longer timeline. Show the cycles of time, gold and silver, bronze, iron. And we're at the bottom of that cycle now. So we're denser than dense, but there were times where there were golden ages where, there was high technology and a much more refined spirituality, if you will. And so there's a way to put the pieces together with evidence. Like, too many people are like, it's true because I said so. Mm-hmm. And that's what school does. The teacher, it's not about learning in school. It's about finding the answer the teacher wants you to give.
Yep, that is so true, and I know that with my own experiences. Exactly, went to school, and they just want you to know the answer, right?
Mm-hmm. It's called the one right answer hypothesis, and there isn't one right answer. And the thing is that that's why in a PhD program they teach you to hedge. They call it, like, the data seems to indicate, the data supports the hypothesis, right? We don't say we've proven or we know, because they know in 25 years a complete new breakthrough could come through, new technology, a new way of looking at things, evidence from more than one place, and we need to stay open. So as far as we know now, it could be. Okay, that's hedging, because you can't say for sure what anything is until you go and excavate. And even then, like I thought with this site, like, what if we get down in there and there's something really strange down there and we really haven't seen anything like it before? So there was, I was at the Star Visions conference in Santa Fe in '96, and there was a woman named Chelsea Floor, and she put up this map, and it was the Great Pyramid, and there was a story of these guys that had climbed 2/3 of the way up the pyramid, and they did this abracadabra kind of mantra, and a stone moved, and they were able to go inside, and they walked down past the surface of the earth, down, and it was musty and dank, and oh my God, when I was reading this thing, I was just like horrified by what an experience. It's dark, old, dirty, like thousands of years had no one been in there. And then they get to the bottom, and all of a sudden everything's perfectly clean, and it lights up. And everywhere they went, they could see it was dark in front of them, and as they moved forward, it lit up. Well, that's the experience that a couple of these psychics have said about this place, that there's some kind of light key that responds to humans, the human body, right? And who knows how that works, but I mean, I'd rather be fascinated than just repeat the same old story. But in this story, they found discs that looked like they were part of a machine. They found code. They found artifacts, and they kept emphasizing how big these chambers were. But they said you went in through the Great Pyramid. And so I went looking around the Great Pyramid, so there was something about this document that was just photocopied. It was an ancient text that didn't have a cover on it, so I don't even know what it was called. But I devoured this thing, and I was completely lit on fire by the idea. And that was 25 years ago. And so I've been trying to find it since. So to me, I think we've hit the jackpot now with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how cool. That sounds so cool. How do the Islamic feel about having the pyramids? Do they appreciate the pyramids?
No, the fact is that the Giza Plateau and the crystal floors in front of the second pyramid at Saqqara, and that whole big thing in front of the step pyramid, they were just used as an open quarry. And there were more pyramids than you see. And the whole pyramid was taken down. There were smaller ones. And they used the stone to build the mosques in Cairo. There's something like 800 mosques in Cairo. And you can see the hieroglyphic that came off, so they don't appreciate them at all. Now, they would have taken them down the way they blasted the Buddhas in Afghanistan, and people were like, no, don't do it. Mm-hmm. And they did it anyway because they're considered un-Islamic. So the only reason the Great Pyramid is still there is because they tried to get rid of it even with explosives. Mm-hmm. So the word is, we don't have the technology to take the pyramids down. And another interesting fact is Louis de Belfont, his team, whoever was paying for things, wanted him to use the stones from the Great Pyramid to build the Suez Canal. And he was a bit of a preservationist, if you will. And he was like, no, how about we use that granite from over there instead? And so he saved the Great Pyramid, in a way. But I don't know that they would have been able to get those stones off anyway, because some of them, there's one stone on the plateau that weighs 200 tons. 200 tons.
That's heavy.
That's really a big stone. So again, with cranes, now we can think about Coral Castle, where Lead Scallion built this huge megalithic site and then decided to move it and wouldn't let anybody or moving things around or building the place. Have the guys driving the trucks bring the truck. He would work at night by himself, and they would come back the next day, and the whole thing was loaded with these huge stones. And so it looks like he figured out, and I say it's a memory, how to do the anti-gravity. That, so it's going to be some kind of sound and light, magnetic, crystal, something that gets amplified using certain kinds of devices, right? And so there's going to be some kind of levitation, nudgers. Some of those stones could have been poured into place, and he died with his secret. So one of the shoots for the New Atlantis will be going to film at Coral Castle in Florida.
That is great. That's
in September. Yeah, so I'm piecing this together in the same style as I did the Pyramid Code to be able to go further back from where the Pyramid Code started and moving into the future of what's being done and real functional pyramids that are being built today.
And could you tell us, my audience, about the New Atlantis project?
Well, the New Atlantis, I use that name because a man named Valery Uvarov in St. Petersburg, Russia, was commissioned by a group that was, they called it the New Atlantis. And Project 12 is another name for the same project, where there's 12 domains, transportation, communication, technology, health, education, agriculture, all kinds of things. And they are looking at a new paradigm in everything, so that the old system is broken beyond measure. Everything we're doing is backwards. The justice system is unjust. Medical system makes you sick. It goes on like that. The education system doesn't teach anything useful, and they can't get a job when you've got the degree. So, I mean, it's broken. And so this is their best attempt at getting scientists together to come up with new ideas. And they built a functional pyramid in the middle, which is there. And then they're building it in the model that Plato talked about, with 4 pyramids around that, and then 4 more in the circle around that. And all of the buildings for all this science and discovery are going around it. And they call that project the New Atlantis. And Valerie approached me to make a new documentary series based on his work. The book is called The Pyramids, or just Pyramids, I think. And it was in Russian, and they had it translated. And then he asked me to build the scientific script, and so this is the continuation of that project. And so I'm now finishing it on my own, but that's why it's called the New Atlantis. And actually, it's a produce company that wanted a place to store the produce before they put it on the truck, so it would be healthier for people. So they have no microwaves because they're dangerous. They have no GMOs there, and they actually try to energize the food for the populace. Now, does that sound like what we're doing here? And so we think, I call it CNN mentality. The only place you're safe is on your own couch. But also, they left us thinking that, there were old guys in trench coats and bread lines with no bread. That's Russia. And the KGB hiding behind every corner. Russia is really amazing. It's doing really well, and the people are dignified and educated and multilingual and beautifully dressed, and the place is gorgeous. And the Hermitage Museum is the largest, oldest. With the Louvre, but the Louvre closed after it opened. I think they were just trying to be the first. But it's got artifacts in there that aren't all broken. It's really a treasure. And so when I came back from Russia, and I told people what I just said, they said, "Oh no, you didn't realize the KGB is just hiding behind the corner. They're just going to come and rip you off because they're all so uncivilized there, and they don't know anything, and maybe they'll catch up to us and get microwaves one day." And it's just like, those are the beliefs and the propaganda that gets shoved down people's throats here. Repeat. They're bad. Right? And, so that's why it's called the New Atlantis. But I also, I like the idea that we're making a loop back into something that made more sense. And so what we're really looking for is a model for an empowered humanity. And those are my words. Because all of the patriarchal values that have had us end up where we are, power over, me, mine, disempowerment of some people so that a few people come to the top, and lies and hidden, and that's even the Amun cycle in the Egyptian that goes round and round. And so their darkest cycle is the Amun, and the Amun priesthood wanted everybody to pay for their salvation, which is kind of like what the churches are doing now, and we still say amen. So all of these cycles, you know, we have had times that made more sense, and that's why I study what I study. That's why I'm trying to piece this together, is because I think that, you know, we owe it to ourselves to leave more for other generations, air that, you know, 7 generations from now can breathe, food that isn't toxic. Like, we're really in a mess. So if people don't realize what a mess we're in, they're believing the propaganda that the economy's recovered and that everything's fine, because the whole thing is just, to me, humanity's on their knees. There's so much suffering, and there's so many things that hurt people, even the work environment, you know, and forced timing and fluorescent lights, and, you know, having to take a 15-minute break and not at a certain time, and, you know, in a closed air circulation system. You know, it's like, it's just really, really hard to be folks nowadays.
Yeah, it is very hard, and Russia is way ahead of us. Like, the technology is amazing, you know, and they don't have microwaves. It's so amazing, for sure.
They care about the people. They do things, and it's obvious, and the people are really comfortable.
Yeah, they are very comfortable. I have to agree with you, for sure. Let's talk about the symbols that is engraved of the Egyptian Labyrinth from 1670. It looks like a mandala. It is a symbol in Buddhism or Hinduism, and some Freemason halls have that type of square on it. What do the symbols engraved symbolize?
Okay, now that is a very interesting set of symbols, because it's divided. It's got a centerpiece, and then it's divided into blocks. And then it's got archetypes that go around the edge of it, okay? And so it's almost like a cast of characters walking along and around. The center is a triple symbol. It's all at once a labyrinth, a brain, and a pyramid. All 3 symbols. If you look at the individual sections, and I'm in the process of animating those, or getting them animated, do it myself. Anyway, so it looks like biology, cosmology, astrology. It looks like code for science of some description. And in a way, you know, the brain being a metaphor for a pyramid is also really interesting, because the pyramids actually replicate something in the resonance of the human body, and the earth, and the solar system, and the galaxy, and the universe. There's something about all of the ways that we are actually put together, and the science of it that fits. There's a parallel structure between all those things. And so the Egyptians were concerned about how we got here, biology, and what happened when we left, cosmology. And so that's the simplest way of looking at the big, huge thing of Egypt that's all full of symbols that we often don't understand. And so that's what I think that code is. And again, I've had psychics look at it and come up with impressions, and that's not enough to guarantee anything. That's enough to generate a strong hypothesis. So a hypothesis is what you think could happen, what you think it might be, and then you've got to find a way to verify that. But you can get your hypothesis from a dream, or from a psychic reading, or a past life memory. You know, that's your hunch, your best guess, and that's where you start. So I taught quantitative research methods to graduate students at the University of Calgary. And that's the methodology. You start out with a research question. How old are the pyramids? What do we think is really down there, right? And then you formulate it in terms of a hypothesis, and then you go and you verify to see if the data supports the hypothesis or not. So right now, the data we have on is measurements of, you know, the size of the rooms, the location of the rooms, that sort of thing. And that's all the data we've got right now.
In Indiana Jones, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, the director is Steven Spielberg. He left clues, like in the last scene, where you see them put the ark and it says top secret on it. Is that how they are keeping the lost knowledge from us?
Okay, well, the thing is that Hollywood is kind of like school and the news, where they come out and they say it is, and they try to create this falseness to look real. Okay, and so most of the time, it's very captivating to us, and I've often used the example of Stargate. There's going to be parts within it, and in Stargate, the first 30 minutes feels like it could be real. But then it turns into the scriptwriter's fantasy where everybody's fighting with each other and at the end somebody kisses. There you've got your story. So in the Indiana Jones series, there are clues, like someone knows the real thing and then they mix it all up so you can't tell what's real and what isn't, which is why we need to develop our own discernment. The Ark of the Covenant was likely an energy machine, and it needed to be charged. And so I think that the corbelled niche inside the Queen's Chamber, so-called Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, is a likely place where they would have been able to slide it in and charge it up. So when they left Egypt in the story in the Bible, it still worked. But over time, it stopped working because it lost its charge. And you can see pictures on the walls of the Temple of Seti I in Abydos, beautifully colored things of lots of devices that look like that. And so, yeah, everything's been dismantled and compartmentalized so that we don't have all the pieces gathered. And then in PhD programs, you study one thing deep, 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 but it's not cross-disciplinary. And that's what's wrong. That's why we can't figure things out. And that's frowned upon in academia. It's a cross-disciplinary. You can't figure out how people learn to talk or how people learn a second language if you don't use cognitive psychology, psycholinguistics, sociolinguistics, like all these different psychology, anthropology, archaeology. All of this fits with how is language developed, how did language split into different different language groups, what's the history of it. The Tower of Babel even fits in with that, where I think we might have all spoken one language until something came along that wanted to divide us all and get us fighting with each other. So we'll be able to figure this out. So, yeah, the Ark of the Covenant is a big clue to it all.
Yes, it is. Very big clue. There were texts that were found about the Atlanteans. Tell us about what they don't want.
You're on track. I love that question.
Thank you.
Okay, so there are texts, and that's been, the thing is a lot of these ancient texts you can't really decipher or figure them out, but every once in a while there's a clue, and it just strikes in a certain way. So there was a prophecy in Atlantis, and it was talking. Yeah, there was a prophecy in Atlantis, and I've seen it like many times actually, the same prophecy. And it shows up, like now we've got all these ancient texts online. As long as a book is older than 75 years, the copyright has been lifted, and so these books can be published as PDFs online. And so then we don't have to, have all of the books in our houses. And so it said that there would be a disaster, a big disaster, and the heart of the crab, the head of the crab would hit the heart of the lion. And that essentially is referring to the Cancer constellation and the Leo constellation, that they would collide. And so that is basically the story of the malfunction at the junction. If there was an asteroid or something that impacted the planet with such aggression, well, it wouldn't have been an aggressive asteroid, but a violent impact, that the axis of the Earth was actually knocked off, that these two constellations would seem to collide the way Mercury appears to go backwards in relationship to the Earth for 3 weeks, 3 times a year. It's not going backwards. It just looks like it is. And so the constellations, in terms of the 2,000 years of each constellation in the precessional cycle, they wouldn't have collided, but they looked like they collided. Yeah. And then everything had to be reset. So that's one of the prophecies. And so, yeah, there's other material that goes along with thing that indicated that they knew there was going to be trouble and that there was time to get ready.
And do you think the ancient Egyptians and Atlanteans had knowledge of time travel?
Yeah. Love your questions.
Thank you.
Yes. No, well, the thing is that they were operating in a completely different way now. Let's talk about the third party hypothesis.
Okay, sure.
Like if the Mayans and the Sumerians and the East Indians and the Egyptians all had similar stories, but they weren't talking to each other, well, they might have had ocean travel, right? Because we see the boats are water stained and they bury the boats that's supposed to take them to the stars, okay? So all of these different bits of information fit with that notion of bilocation, teleportation, time travel, okay? You know, parallel realities, quantum physics, all of these kinds of things that we have just slammed shut and said don't exist because you only live once, right? And they outlawed reincarnation, and our technology just got slammed shut. So as long as they keep telling us that we're the smartest we've ever been, and that's just science fiction. Mm-hmm. But fiction, the emphasis on the word fiction instead of the word science. But all these things are coming out now. The other speaker at Modern Knowledge Tour at the end of August is Nassim Haramein, and he's made a lot of strides through this whole idea of quantum physics and how we can understand that. So yes, I think that they were able, and then it could have been, okay, how about this for an idea? If we were the ancient Egyptians, mm-hmm. and we knew the whole thing was going to come tumbling down, and that every generation that followed was going to get more and more violent and a bloodbath and less for the people, and, you know, focused on you know, the few that have it all. If we knew that, and then we were going to make a turn and come back to something that was more civilized, mm-hmm. what would we leave for ourselves to trigger the memory? Again, if you and I were on that committee,
yes,
and it had to be symbolic, it couldn't be a language per se.
Right.
You know, what would we leave to trigger our own memories? Right? And so these ideas where you see the Egyptians are doing energy work, they have the Ka body, the Ba, so the body double is the Ka, and there's even places where it's a triple body. Mm-hmm. And I've got photographs of this from the narrow hallways in the Temple of Dendera. But all over, once you start looking for the Ba and the Ka, and even Abarakadabara, that's their little abracadabra, as we grew up on that as kids. Yeah.
I remember watching Bugs Bunny, right? And he always went, abracadabra.
But if you understand that we've just pronounced it differently, and that's what they were talking about. But what is that? Abracadabra, you know, I even used it when they're going to open the stone. It's like this mantra that allows you to go into another world, that makes the rabbit pop out of the hat. Abracadabra. Okay, well, what is that? You know, there's, you know, we turned it into a cartoon. We've turned it into a kid's, you know, plaything, but there's a lot more to it than that. But that would be the methodology through which they would have been able to accomplish the transmutation of the atom, parallel realities, you know, more of a cosmic influence. And teachers being in other dimensions. It's other dimensions, basically, is what it is.
Right, for sure. Mm-hmm. If you have not watched it, because you will meet this wonderful man by the name of Hakim, who is very knowledgeable. He talks about how we lost 360 senses as a human race. We're continuing to lose more senses by the day. Animals, but they have to be in the wild, still have many senses, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, so we've been dumbed down, literally.
We have.
And so 360, like the way I've come to understand it, and what you'll see in the pyramid code, is a goddess standing, or priestess, if you will, standing inside a sphere. So it goes all the way around, like standing inside the earth, if you will. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the chakra, and I've done studies on synesthesia, which is hearing a picture, seeing music. Somebody gives somebody flowers on TV, and I can smell them sometimes, not always, but you know, like it's cross-sensory modalities. So I think of it as handles, like that you know, if your belly chakra is connected to your intuition, there's a handle there, and everything's connected. Mm-hmm. And so in the study that I did, looking at the effect of the Great Pyramid on the human aura and the chakra system, what was happening is I measured people before they went in. They spent 2 minutes in the sarcophagus, and then I measured them after, and then a delayed post-test. And what was happening is the chakras were in training. And so they were all communicating, and the heart chakra was resonating off the sphere. So it's almost like an owl that can turn all the way around, turn its head and have the 360. So the 360 degrees is also 360 senses. It's everything talking to everything else. So when somebody says something and you feel it's true, you might get a rush, you might get, the hair standing up on your arm, a feeling, or something's wrong, you get this in your stomach. Or just this dread or a sense of contraction. Well, those are our senses trying to talk to us, but most of us don't listen, right? You could get something nudging you saying, bring your umbrella. Well, no, the weather report said it's not going to rain. Well, either you listen to these messages or you don't. So there's ways that we can communicate, and we actually are influencing each other. We start to entrain with one another, okay? And so once we are in resonance with one another, then that starts to influence what we know and how we feel, and right? So some people drain us and some people energize us. And all of that is our senses talking about, who's a psychic vampire and who's actually giving you something. Right? And so all of that is connected with our feelings, and our knowing is a very deep power.
It is.
He says that in the Pyramid Code. But we're taught it's not what you know, it's what they want you to think, right? And so that's what the propaganda and TV and Hollywood and school is. They don't teach you how to think, they teach you what to think.
Right, you're so right. And that's what, they were training you to this, exactly like what she said, to think what they want you to think and to do what they want you to do, too, right?
Or to unplug, disconnect. Departments are disconnected. No, that's not my department. That's not my job. Instead of connect. That's what we need. We need to feel connected to each other. We need to feel connected to the planet and to animals. But, animals, how the elephants were running away from the tsunami. They were long gone before the tsunami happened. It was the people that went and stared into the water and got wiped right out. But the animals knew to get away.
For sure. They have a lot of senses. See, that is an example, right?
Well, they know which people to like.
Yeah, they do. And
like if somebody doesn't like this, somebody's dogs doesn't like them, and they don't even come with their dogs. My dog knows that she's not as comfortable with them, right? Somehow. So I think that the animals are sensing. I have always said that my dog's a very good judge of character.
Yeah, and she sees it, right?
She can see. And some people she takes to right away, and other people she's like,
Yeah, and it's like, no.
Don't touch me.
Yeah.
Well, and that's senses. That's sense.
But we lost it. We once had it, and we lost it. So.
Yeah, but it goes on a lot of levels. This is what psychicness is, and this is so the reason that I did that big study with hundreds of readings was because over the years I suspected I was becoming more psychic because of the time I was spending inside the body of the Sphinx and inside the pyramid. I spent a lot of time by myself and with a select few other people. I wouldn't go there with the public because that's magnifying. But there was something about that energy that was contributing to connecting something inside me. So I wanted to measure if that was true with other people, right? And so, what is psychicness? It's connection.
It is, right? Right, yeah, exactly, it is. How was it being a woman trying to do research in an Islamic country when you were doing the Pyramid Code?
A lot of people are worried about that. I just feel so at home in Egypt. I think we really misinterpret them.
Okay.
We think that they're confining their women, and then I realize that the women want to be at home. They feel all comfortable. They like being with each other and the babies and cooking the food and letting the men go out into the world. So it's not even that different from our mothers. My mother, and I was born in 1954. My mother had those kinds of beliefs as well. So I feel really respected as a woman there, and I don't feel any kind of problem at all. I think that they wear their hearts on their sleeve. They want you to come and meet their mother. They want to give you tea. I suppose every once in a while but not really. No, I can't say that there's prejudice necessarily. That's my experience going there 29 times and living there for 2.5 years. I don't see a problem there. And actually, I was there in April. People are like, oh, you can't go to Egypt. But they've been saying that since 77. Don't go, don't go, don't go. Oh, it's dangerous, dangerous. Well, I think they don't want us connecting the dots.
Yeah, they don't. And when you went in April, how was your experience in Egypt?
Well, it was the first time I'd gone over in a long time without a group. I'd often stay before and after the group, but to not have a group is... But we stayed like a block off Tahrir Square. And the energy on the square is fantastic. Like, they've cleaned it all up and they beautified it and they put this monument, which is essentially an enormous flag. But I could feel the pride of the people. Like, it's really quite interesting. And Egypt is changing. Like, they're building a magnetic levitation train that instead of it taking 12 hours to get to Luxor, it'll take 4. Mm-hmm. They're building all these new roads. They're building a brand new museum. They're really moving ahead. And actually, the airport in Cairo is new. And sitting at the airport in Frankfurt, in San Francisco, I was thinking, you know what? The Cairo airport is more modern than these. You know what I mean? So we just get filled with all this, fear. I mean, 63 people can get murdered on a weekend in Chicago, and we don't think, oh, I can't go to LA. We don't think that way. But, anything happens that they say happened, and I'm not even sure if it was that much of a problem in the first place, and then, oh, you can't go there. It's like, it's just, we're trained to be afraid, and it works. If people are afraid, it works. So I thought the energy was fabulous. The weather was fabulous. April's a good time to go. Yep. And things are fine there. They're not any different than they were the first time I went. Well, I mean, a little bit in terms of development and, more traffic and people in poverty. But in terms of, I never feel afraid in Egypt. I just don't.
Yeah. Egypt is this, like, nice country, I've always wanted to go there, but, yeah. But... And, something that I find the ancient Egyptians were in balance with life, like, much more than now, like, do you find that?
Well, they're kind of all psychic themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They're extremely intuitive, very, very kinesthetic. Well, it's Africa. It's the African continent. So they drum, they're playful, they sing, they dance, and they're psychic. They know stuff. Like, yeah, they're very, very in tune.
Yeah, they are. I see that, yeah.
And we're very disconnected, and I see that when, an American show will come on movie, and we look so hardened eyes, hardened heart, and they are so loose and easy that it's just, I can relax. I relax there. And we also don't hear the propaganda, because here, whether you listen to the news or not, there's all these people around that have listened to the news that think that the Muslims are so scary and that there's terrorists everywhere, which I don't think for one second. And that propaganda's gone because they don't know that's how we're talking about them. Mm-hmm. Right? And so you just get there and you're in a milieu of a unified field. So Egyptians are really unified. They are each other's brothers and sisters. Right? And so they welcome you into the family. But so if you go to Luxor, you go anywhere, to Alexandria, Egyptians are Egyptians, whether you've met them before or not. They have a certain shared value system, which is incredibly inclusive. They take care of each other. They feed each other. They're beautiful people. They really, truly are. And we're trying to make them into horror stories. It's just really and it's working.
That's so sad that it's working. But you see, people here, like where we are, we're always, like, blaming, like, look, they're not, like, because they're more advanced, right? It's like that we get kind of, like, frightened by that we'll get, like, that we will get it here. I mean, it's for propaganda, too, right? And then we're, like, brainwashed into that, into that mentality that people start thinking and believing it. Something, it's like the Nazis quote, if you say it enough, the lie, people will begin to believe it. And that is the most honest thing that I heard so far, because that's exactly what is happening today, right?
Well, and lies are normal. You know, everything on TV, you know, you're in a big struggle, somebody comes along and says, how are you? And you say, fine. You know, like, we're lying. We expect to be lied to. Commercials are lying. You know, the product isn't probably going to work. And they, you know, mix it all up with joy and happiness and love, and then you're supposed to eat the cereal. You know, so this is public relations. And that was a term coined by Berets, who was Freud's nephew. Right? And so, I mean, everything is just based on lies and stealing. Yep. Lies and stealing, and that's been normalized. It's trickled into the collective unconscious, and people don't think they have to be truthful. And that is a very low state of consciousness.
And it's very scary that people today are doing that, you know, lying and cheating and all of that stuff, right? Because that's not...
And thinking it's okay.
Yeah, and they think it's okay on top of it, and that's what gets you more angry, right?
Well, and the pyramid code has been really successful in terms of going far and wide. And I took it off like 100 days, and I'm not even finished taking it off, and that is stealing. And so, you know, I never gave the copyright to anybody, and so people were watching it for free. So, you know, it cost me $550,000 to make the pyramid code. I got back 100. Right? That's not fair. I shouldn't be $400,000 in the hole for a project that helped so many people. And so when I sent the notification through YouTube to take it down, there were people writing to me saying, I have the right. It's fair use copyright. No, it isn't.
No.
And one guy even copied the FBI warning, and then he typed over the top and made fun of things and agreed with things and wrote on it and said that he had the right to do that.
So
to totally damage my material. And instead of saying, I'm really sorry, I understand it's wrong, he argued for the possibility of that being right. That's not right. That's not right.
It isn't. It is wrong. It is so sad the way people do that, you know, make bad comments, like on your copyrighted documentary on top of it. Like, they didn't get your permission to put those comments. They didn't write and say, can I do that? No, they didn't. They had no right whatsoever to do what they did. And that is very sad to see and very disgraceful.
Yep, it is. And it happens all the time. Because people think if it's online, it should be free. And, you know, they'll pay, end up with $80,000 of student loans to then not have a job, but they don't want to pay for things that real knowledge and real expertise. So it's really a sad state of affairs, if you ask me.
Yeah, it is a very sad society, and it is patriarchy, right?
Well, patriarchy is about disconnecting, power over. If you can't see it, it's not there. You know, it's about rules and government and you know, fixed time and, yeah, taxes, utilities, interest, insurance. So, matriarchal cultures are about women controlling men. It's empowerment instead of power over. It's blood from life, the womb, instead of blood from death, which is what, you know, patriarchy's got, you know, blood, people being killed all over the place, and lack of truth. Matriarchy is about symbolism, timelessness, all these different things. It's a value system, and that's what I've been saying. We are in a crisis of value.
We are, yeah, for sure. I have to agree with you 100% on that.
That's right. And so if we're going to fix this world, we need inclusion. We need cross-disciplinary, interactive. We need the multidimensionality. Yeah, these are principles. And so to me, if something supports the old system, I don't have anything to do with it. So we've got to build a whole new way of being and thinking. And I've been saying for 30 years, cancel money and start over. Why do we need government? We don't even need it, but it's just got us all by a stranglehold. And the monopoly on utilities, and, you know, they're wrong. They add. They just, it's a complete ripoff. But what it's doing is it's keeping people frozen in space with their big bills. Like, I've lived in 6 countries.
Yep.
And in Taiwan, you know, it costs like $1.50 for a landline. You know, things just don't cost. Like, if you go to Korea, you can get your internet, your cell phone, and all your TV stations for $20 a month. Mm-hmm. Well, what's with that? Why are we paying $300 or whatever when you add all that up?
Yep.
Okay, so because people don't protest, because How are you going to get through that? I mean, it's really, we need a completely new system.
We do, yeah. We're in desperate need for it, and the system is working right now as we speak, right? Well, so in the Bosnian pyramid, someone found a bear bone that was actually an instrument. Could you please tell my audience a little bit more about that?
So they found a lot of things. Now, the Bosnian pyramid tunnel system was decommissioned, very much like Göbekli Tepe, which is a set of 22 temples in Turkey. And it's almost like they had the forewarning of the flood. So they filled it all up, and then things stayed preserved. So now they're excavating at Göbekli Tepe, and they've been excavating for 9 years in the Bosnian pyramid. So one of the things they found was a little piece of baby bear bone that was drilled with a bunch of different holes in it, and a lot of people tried to play it. And then this man, who was the first trumpet of the Bosnian Symphony Orchestra, put it in his left hand, and I have footage of him playing it. He can get 4 octaves out of it. Now, that thing was also dated to 34,000 years, something like that. And that puts it squarely with Cro-Magnon man, Neanderthal, all of that. And we think of them as, savages dragging women around by the hair, and all they have is a club. But what that does is that puts them into an artistic modality. And so they found all of this unified writing down there as well. But the fact that they found these little, what they call Shakti dolls, where Maria Gimbutas found a bunch, and you could put them in your hand and no one would see them. What hand am I holding up? My left hand.
Yes.
It's a left-handed Stone Age pyramid culture. So for me, with angels and archetypes and evolutionary map of feminine consciousness, all of the goddess traditions, matriarchal, right? And then all the pyramid stuff that seemed completely unrelated, all of a sudden we have pyramid culture, pyramid power meeting Stone Age left-handed matriarchal culture. Well, that happened for me when I went to speak at the Hidden Mysteries Conference at the Bosnian Pyramids. And I'm like, really? It makes sense. But you haven't heard anybody putting those two together before.
Yeah, I haven't.
So, it's left-handed culture. So if you take any of this stuff and put it in your right hand, it doesn't fit. You put it in your left hand, it fits. That's interesting.
Yep,
because that's the right brain dominance.
It is right.
So we've painted the whole picture of the past wrong. Like, the pyramids were built for the ego of the pharaoh, and they were tombs, and they worshipped animals, and no, they were archetype totems, the animal medicine, Yeah, it's just, and the slaves, and they'd whip the slaves so they'd carry the rock. It's just nothing like that. I mean, they needed so much sophistication and knowledge in order to be able to put them together, and they're all aligned, and it's all the sacred geometry and the construction that wouldn't fall apart after 3 world floods, right?
Amazing.
We've got to really think about that. Now, one of the things with construction, you talk about an inverted pyramid underneath. What that would do if there was, it's not an upside down pyramid. It's that there's a platform that's inverted slightly.
Okay.
And when there's an earthquake or a bunch of water pushing, it makes the stones get tighter together. So that's like earthquake proof. That's flood proof. Okay. That's what the pyramids are, and they're heavy enough, and they're placed on special lines of the telluric currents where, the conductivity meets the lack of conductivity, and it creates an energy spot. Hakim says in the Pyramid Code, energy puffs from the earth, where there's a certain field that allows for the pyramids to be functional, right? Right. And so it all fits together. It all fits together beautifully.
It does. And it's amazing how the pyramids can survive flood, and everything, It's this amazing structure. Yes. So could Tesla have figured out how the pyramids have worked by creating the tower, his tower?
I think so. I always think that somebody like Tesla was remembering. He was remembering ancient technology. I mean, why would he come up with his ideas? Because he somehow had a feeling of it working before. But there's Wilhelm Reich, who understood argon energy, and there's a number of other people. But in the Tesla Tower, the characteristic features of that free wireless technology, safe wireless technology, because they chose a bandwidth for our wireless technology that's the same as the human body, and so it impacts it in a negative way. But they could have chosen a bandwidth, right? And so his Tesla tower was going to make, free utilities for all of us. We shouldn't be paying anything for any of that stuff that I'm talking, utilities, taxes, interest, insurance. We shouldn't be paying for any of that. It's just a way to enslave us all.
Yeah.
And so there's passageways that go underneath the tower, and there is a limestone aquifer down there. And so all of that works with the shapes, the technology, always the same as the pyramid energy.
Yeah. And does the Sphinx have some type of energy?
Well, for sure. Every time I spent any time inside the body of the Sphinx, I wouldn't sleep for 72 hours. I would be downloading all these light codes. I never, ever, ever, ever was able to sleep for all that time after. I mean, I was just like on fire with something. Some kind of energy would come in. So now they've done a restoration inside the Sphinx, and it's not the same as it used to be. Like they've interrupted the passage of energy in there a little bit. But yeah, the Sphinx is unique in its own way, and there's definitely energy in there. I was completely addicted to it for years.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there is a lot of energy for sure. I'm aware of you say. Mm-hmm. So, let's talk a little bit about Atlantis. How is Atlantis related to the pyramids?
Well, like I said before, if we were doing the evacuation committees, I think that part of the plan could have been the whole Earth with pyramids, and that they sent committees out to build colonies, and other people came back to Atlantis, because my understanding is that there was like 50 years of warning. That it wasn't like 5 days or anything. So there was time to make a plan. So it seems that everywhere there's functional straight-sided pyramids. So I'm not talking about the modern ones that are misaligned or step pyramids or flat-top pyramids. And the Great Pyramid counts because the casing stones were taken off. So it looks like it's got a bunch of little steps, but essentially it's a straight-sided pyramid. That everywhere there are straight-sided pyramids, and like I say, we're finding them all over the world now.
Yes, we are.
Like literally. That could have been the Atlanteans who were, had, higher knowledge from, high-level beings that would have taught them this stuff, that they could have gone all over the world in an effort to preserve the energy, in an effort to help humanity, in an effort to stabilize the grid, stabilize the planet, something like that.
Yeah, I see your point. And where do you think Atlantis was located?
Everywhere. I think it was a worldwide seafaring culture, and that they built their cities with the circular patterns with the water in between.
Okay.
So if it was worldwide seafaring, like I'm sure they had desalinization on the boats. They grew sprouts and fruit. They didn't get scurvy. They to be able to be on the sea for long periods of time and take care of themselves. And then they would come to each port, which would be a city that would be built like the New Atlantis is talking about. And they'd come in one way and stop and drop their goods off, and then maybe move and get more, and then come out the other way. So all the cities had to be round so that the boats could come and go. And that's how they did it. And so, there's evidence of that through the Minoan culture. And I don't think for one second it was King Minos, but that's Crete and Knossos and all of that. So all through the Mediterranean area, and you've got to understand that the sea levels were not the same, right? So the sea levels, that's what happened with these world disasters, is the sea levels went way down, way up, buried things, cracked continents and stuff over time. So it's not going to look like it used to. But also scuba diving didn't start till 1954. And with the tsunami and the restriction of the pullback of the water, there were, towns that were seen off the coast of India. So Bimini Road, the whole coast of Cuba, the Azores, all through that mid-Atlantic ridge, right? All through there's been evidence of, the Bermuda Triangle. There's pyramids, very, very deep. And some people say, well, we don't know how it got there, so it can't be true. Well, I mean, where's it going to go? It's going to go to the bottom of the ocean, deep, probably.
Yeah.
If that's where the two plates, slide over the top of each other, it's like a conveyor belt. right? And so you can see if magnetic alignments and you go across the whole Atlantic Ocean back and forth, you'll see that there's parallel bands where everything's pointing this way, and then the next band, everything's pointing that way. So it's showing geological time and magnetic reversals.
Okay.
So that whole area, all the way down to the Canary Islands and the Azores, which are Portuguese islands off the coast of Africa and a little north, all of that could have been the mountaintops. So they found these circular models, if you will, close to the Strait of Gibraltar, which is where Morocco and Spain almost touch, and then further out from there, which is the same general area. So Poseidon is said to have been the main city, which might have been there. But the high altiplano in South America, when you look at the widest part of South America, there's a high plain. Some people are saying Atlantis was there. So, so I think it was a worldwide seafaring culture that was everywhere. And that's, again, the one right answer. Atlantis was A, in Bimini, B, in South America, C, off the coast of the Pillars of Hercules. Well, they force us to do A, B, C, D, right? All of the above.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Everybody's arguing. Watch, the Atlantis shows. They're like, well, they said they had elephants and they didn't have elephants. It's just this patriarchal way of debunking everything so that you can't. So they lead you along and they go no, and they lead you along and they go no. It's like at the end of watching one of these things, you just feel scrambled, because they're playing with your brain so that you won't figure it out. I find them incredibly painful to watch.
Yes, they are playing with your brain for sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why somebody told me that they watched the Pyramid Code 100 times. It's like the most common thing that people say about the Pyramid Code is when they finish it, they watch it again. Yeah,
I
right?
That too. I just love your documentary. I keep watching it over and over again.
But because it doesn't leave you all mixed up, and it asks questions, like, how would our society change if consciousness was the highest value instead of profit? Well, that's not telling you what to think. That's inviting you to consider that maybe the way we're doing things isn't helpful. And then, you say it's helpful to the rich guys, but is it? Those rich guys have grandchildren that have to breathe too. I mean, this is a sickness. We reward psychopathology and sociopaths. We reward, we advertise for criminals. We show people hurting each other and killing each other, and that's modeling. It's just a nation full of misfits and sneaks, people sneaking around, hoping nobody will figure it out. Well, I don't like those values. I think truth and respect for the audience, over and over again, give them something original, and link it to something that's real, right? There's too little of that out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is, and the society is this, it's all, one way thinking, it's like, there's nothing in between, like, everyone looks at, like, black and white, but nothing in between. That's the best way to explain it on that part, yeah. So, do you think the Atlanteans were left-handed because they used the right side of their brain?
Well, wait, I didn't say the Atlanteans were left-handed. I said that in the Bosnian pyramids, dated to 38,000 years ago, it was a left-handed culture.
Okay.
And I think we're going to come to see the last 5,000 years as the patriarchal hiccup, the failed experiment called patriarchy, and that everything else was matriarchal.
Yeah, okay.
That's my conviction. But what we need is balance between the two hemispheres, and that's what you see over and over and over and over and over in the Egyptian stuff. It's all balance, with the left foot slightly forward. The left side of what's mysterious, what's mystical, what you can't see is respected, but only ever so slightly. So it's not about out of balance in any kind of way. It's all about balance. So yes, but they were using the right side of their brain. In patriarchy, they'd tie your left hand behind your back if you were trying to write with it. They'd smack you, and we were all forced to write with our right hand, so it would push into the left brain dominance. I mean, that's totally ridiculous. Because there's lots of research done that people who are left-handed have a different brain setup. They're more artistic.
Right. So could you please give us your websites and where people can look you up?
So pyramidcode.com.
Okay.
And then I've got interactive-u.com, interactiveu.com. And then there's the Indiegogo campaign that's called the New Atlantis Dr. Carmen Boulter. So I'm asking for people to support me in finishing the new project, because the only way to get it to be true is to stay away from the networks who want everything to be fake. So I really do need your help to finish it.
Yes.
And so those are the websites. That's how people can find me. But somebody asked, like, do you have a business card? I don't know. Just Google Carmen Pyramid, and I'll come up, and I do.
Yes, and for sure, please check out Carmen's Ingaloo campaign and support it. Donate as much as you can. Like, it's hard times, I understand, but please support it as much as you can.
Even $5 copies on you. And for all the people who watch the Pyramid Code for free, you could now do the pay-per-view download and pay for it and contribute, because millions and millions and millions of people, I mean, just counting the hits in the 2 days that I was taking it down there, came up to well over 3 million hits of people who watched it for free. So that's not fair. I don't think that's fair. So I am asking for people to help, and as many people as possible, and to pass it on to your networks.
What countries is the Pyramid Code available? What languages do you have a Pyramid Code translated into?
It's translated into Russian and Arabic, and I'm not sure what else at the moment, but it aired in 38 countries. But I think it was on Netflix in US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Malta, the UK, and I skipped one, but 7 countries it's in on Netflix.
Wow, that is so great. So please support Carmen by buying the Pyramid Code DVD or checking it out on Netflix. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on to my radio show. It was a pleasure and an honor to talk to you about this discovery and much more. And I would like to invite you onto my show to do another show as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie-Marie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Crystal Kids Radio Show. Your host, Natalie-Marie Hart. To check out more of our archives, check out or go to www.crystalkidsradio.com for more. Thank you for listening, and please stay tuned for more.